Our next speaker is Ron Elwood. He's supervising attorney for the Legal Services Advocacy Project. He has worked in New York in management positions at the New York City Department of Consumer Affairs and at the New York State Public Service Commission. And he's also worked in Minnesota as a consultant on energy for the Minnesota State Legislature and as a planner on housing and homelessness for Ramsey County Human Services Department. What he's very widely known for right now is that he crafted the foreclosure relief bill that became law in Minnesota in 2013. Originally, a bill did come before a committee in the legislature, but it didn't get out of the committee. But Ron was able to craft a bill that passed almost unanimously or virtually unanimously in both the Minnesota House and the Minnesota Senate. And he will explain the protections that this law and other laws that have been passed or rules that have been passed by the federal government provide to homeowners. And he'll also discuss the process by which he worked his magic and how he was able to get this bill passed unanimously.
Well, thanks.
Thank you.
That was way too big of a build-up. I'm not doing all that. So, thank you. It's such a privilege to be on the panel with Owen and Nalima and Dana. Thank you so much. I thought their presentation was so informative. I learned something today that my life expectancy depends on my address. And if you think I'm telling you where I live, forget it, because I don't want to know. That's really scary. No, actually, it was really informative. So let me ask you, how many homeowners do we have here? Any renters? Well, good. How many folks here work with consumers and are in agencies, organizations that help consumers? And a couple, and the rest of you are actual citizens that came out here tonight and missed Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to come here and listen to us? Man, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much. So, you know, I share your excitement, Nalima, about the Minneapolis elections because this signals something profound in our society. I mean, really profound change. And, you know, the times, they certainly are changing, and they're going to change pretty quickly. But I'll tell you one thing I think that really hasn't changed all that much over time is the folks who see the law as a way to fight and achieves social and economic justice. And that's kind of what our group at Legal Aid is all about. Is there anybody here who doesn't know what Legal Aid is? Don't be shy, because if you don't know, I want to tell you about it. If you do know, I won't waste your time. Well, great. So Legal Aid, obviously, I work for Legal Aid, and I'm Legal Aid. A small group of us are Legal Aid's lobbyists. So that's what I do. I'm not a real lawyer. I just go to the Capitol and schmooze with the legislators and try to get bills passed that help our clients and consumers. And my particular area of the waterfront is, among others, this whole housing and foreclosure, predatory lending arena. So just so you have some background. So I'm very proud to work for Legal Aid. I've been there for 15 years, and I have no intention of going anywhere because it's a wonderful place to work. So what I am going to tell you about is, since we have renters and homeowners here, and we have organizations, the people represent organizations who help renters and homeowners, hopefully this presentation will have some value for you. So as Carol was so kind to mention, a pretty landmark bill passed last session, the Foreclosure Relief Act. And is everybody familiar with your state representative here from Brooklyn Park, Melissa Hortman, Representative Hortman? Well, next time you see her, give her a standing round of applause in front of her, because she was the author of this bill. Carol was very nice. I think I wrote all those great words about myself, so they're not true, obviously. But if really the real reason that this bill got passed was Representative Melissa Hortman and then Senator Patricia Torres-Ray from Minneapolis. Those were the two chief authors of this bill, and it did something extremely unique in America. There is potentially maybe one law in California that is sort of similar, but we're better. Duh, right? But anyway, this is a pretty unbelievable law. I'm going to quickly run through it and run through my presentation because I know you want to get to questions. You've been sitting a long time, you've been listening to us yak away at you, and we want to have more of a dialogue. So let's go through pretty quickly. Well, first of all, let me point out before I talk about this slide is that obviously legal aid doesn't have some slick graphic, communications people, because you can see the glitch in this slide here that I did it. And another note to self, don't do this at midnight, the night before your presentation. So anyway, the long and short of this is, in Minnesota, lenders and servicers have to do a few things. There have to be a few prerequisites before they can actually foreclose on you. So there was, before this law, there were 4 basic prerequisites. This law added a 5th. And that 5th one is compliance with the new requirements around the loan modifications and around dual tracking. Anybody, have you heard of the term dual tracking? Anybody don't know what dual tracking is? Well, I'll tell you. No, it's good. That's great. And I appreciate your honesty because it's important. This is a practice where lenders, on the one hand, will be talking to you about your loan modification. And you've sent in all your papers, and you've done all that work, and you're trying desperately to get a modification to stay in your home. So on this hand, you're talking to the folks, and they're saying, yeah, we're going to get you this, or you might even be making a payment on a temporary. But at the same time, on this track, so here you're going down one track of a modification, and on the other track, the lenders, the clock is ticking, and they're selling your house in a foreclosure sale. And next thing you know, your house is being sold, and you go, wait a minute, you said I got us a loan, I'm working on a loan modification. What are you doing selling my house? Shouldn't we see whether or not I can make this loan modification before you sell my house? So that's what dual tracking is, working on the loan modification at the same time they're proceeding to foreclosure. That was a practice that was very discredited. It got a lot of press all over the country, and people said, that's just not right. Do it in sequence. If I don't qualify, then sell my house. But, don't do it at the same time. So there were new requirements around getting people loan modifications and prohibiting this dual tracking. So the most important thing about, if you remember one thing from my presentation, it's that what this new law does, said before you can foreclose on me, you gotta help me get a loan modification if I'm eligible, and you can't dual track me. Nowhere else in America, no state, except California, has something even remotely similar. So that is a pretty remarkable thing, and Representative Hortman deserves a great amount of credit. So here's the bottom lines on all these things. So what do they have to do? First, they have to tell you what options you have. There may not be some. Different lenders have there's a million different types of loans. If you think there's a lot of cereal, there's more loans. You go on a shelf, there's more types of loan products, and there's a million of them. But there are different options, and they have to tell you, here is what we offer as a way that you can stay in your home and restructure your loan. Second thing they have to do is help you send in the paperwork, because one of the things that has been extremely frustrating for folks is, what do I have to send in? Okay, you have to send this and this and this. And then you send all that in, and they go, well, you didn't send this in. Well, you didn't tell me that. Or, I sent that in already. Well, I didn't get it. Send it in again. So what this piece of the law says, they have to help you get the right documentation, give you enough time to get your papers together, and send it in. The next thing they have to do is they have to evaluate your application. Doesn't seem there ought to be a law to say that, right? Pretty straightforward, but sure enough, it's something that has not happened on a timely enough basis, as Dana can attest to. So this says, this is all before they can foreclose, okay? Next thing they have to do, and here's another most important thing of the statute. If you are eligible, they must, let me repeat that, they must give you the loan modification if you qualify. No monkeying around. And then, if for some reason they did not give it to you, and you think you're eligible, so let's say when you put in your application, you were working a part-time job. And it took them all this time, it took them 6 months to get to this point, and then they turn you down. Well, in that time, maybe you got a full-time job, and now you're making a lot more money. So you say, wait a minute, I want to appeal. They have an appeal process, then you have to go through the entire process before they can foreclose. So long and short of the first provisions, they have to tell you what your options are. They have to help you get the paperwork in. They have to evaluate it timely. If you qualify, they have to give it to you. And if there's an appeal process, you have to go through that all before they can start the foreclosure process. Okay, what happens if they started the foreclosure process and now you want to apply for a loan modification? This is the dual tracking, right? Where you send in your application, but they start the clock to sell your house. Well, they have these new dual tracking requirements. You know, I'm going to click through these quickly because it's just really a lot of, it's technical, and there are different points in the process. The bottom line is, if you send in an application, they either have to not hold the sale, not schedule the sale, or if you get it in 7 days before the sale, they have to stop the sale. So the bottom line is, if you get your application in within a relatively timely way, they have to wait, process your application before they can go through with the sale. So these are these dual tracking things. Okay, so what happens if they mess up? Here's a really important piece of the law, that unlike any place else, if they violated any of this, you have the right as a homeowner to go into court and ask the court to either stop the sale if it hasn't happened, or if it's already happened, to take that sale and throw it out. Start over again because you didn't do what you were supposed to do. And what's really important is, if you win, they pay your attorney fees. And that, for any consumer protection advocate, any consumer advocate, is very, very important, because legal aid, which gives free legal assistance, can only help a certain number of people with very limited resources, like all nonprofits. We wish we had 1 million attorneys to help every single person in Minnesota that needs our help. Well, good luck with that. That's not happening. We try to take the most egregious cases and but there's a lot of people out there who need the help. And maybe they don't qualify for our services. Well, then what? Well, they can go to a private lawyer. And if that lawyer evaluates that case and says, yeah, you got a good case, we're going to win. I'm taking your case. And you don't have to pay me a dime, because you know what? When we win, they'll pay me. And that allows a lot more people to get into court and exercise the law and the rights they've been given by Representative Hortman and Senator Patricia Torres-Ray. Okay, let's talk about renters. So, there was a very important development at the Capitol last year. Representative Allen and Senator Champion authored a bill that made the federal protections permanent. What are the federal protections? Okay, so if you are a renter and got caught up in this foreclosure crisis, and you're renting a property and the owner of that property is getting that thing foreclosed, well, that's not a good situation. What did you do? You paid your rent. What did they do? They didn't pay their mortgage. What happens to you? Out. Not fair. Really a tough situation. Well, up until 2009, even if your lease, let's just say the homeowner lost the house and they have to get out on December 31st. Let's just say that. But your lease goes till March. Who do you think, before this law, who do you think won? Not the renter. Too bad. I got my lease here. Tough. Out December 31st. Goodbye. That's not fair. That's not right. So during the foreclosure crisis, they passed a temporary law in Congress that said, okay, we're gonna for a couple of years we're gonna change it. You either have to stay 90 days after that the homeowner has to, loses the home and it goes to the bank or somebody else. You got 90 days to find yourself another place, or to the end of your lease, whichever is longer. And that's really fair. I mean, the banks want the property, they want to turn it over, they want to sell it to a new owner. Yes, we need to transfer property quickly. On the other hand, a lot of these houses stay on the market, as you well know, for a while, especially, some houses that aren't worth all that much. And the bottom line is that renter has the right to stay there till the end of their lease, honors the lease. Well, this was going to expire December 31st. It's going to expire in a couple of weeks. And that right, which is so fair and so just and so just normal, will go away in America unless something happens in Congress. Enough said there. Not in Minnesota, because of Representative Allen and Senator Champion. Because what they did last year and the legislature did, almost unanimously, is to make that provision just in Minnesota permanent. So the renters have this right now in perpetuity, and I think that's just awesome. All right. 2 more minutes. I'm going to run through a lot. There are other protections for renters in foreclosure that were put in several years ago, or renters, prospective renters. Don't you think it would be nice if you were renting a property that you knew that in a couple of months this property is going to change hands and wouldn't it be nice if they told you that? Well, before 2008, they didn't have to tell you that. So they'd collect your rent for a bunch of months and then say, see, I'm out of here, you're out of here, goodbye. No more. They got to tell you, if you're going to be a prospective renter, so I'm thinking about renting this property, if that's in foreclosure, they got to tell you about it. Up until last session, if they didn't tell you about it, oops, not much, nothing, no penalty. Well, we put in a $500 penalty. So then if they don't tell you and you lease up and you find out after the fact, you can get $500. Okay, so the other thing, when properties go into foreclosure, what often happens is the owner stops paying the water and the gas and the electric bill, right? And who's sitting in the premises freezing, thirsty, and without, TV? The renter, because the property owner is not paying the rent, paying the utilities. Well, a couple of years ago, the legislature made it a lot easier for the tenants to say, okay, I'm not going to pay my rent to the landlord. I'm going to pay it to the utility company, keep my service on, and be able to do it. Okay. This is a provision that helps renters if they left the property before the eviction came in a foreclosure. They were getting evicted by the banks. That happens all the time, sort of the routine thing. They just kind of send the eviction notice out. And you know how bad it is if you have an eviction on your record. That's like the scarlet letter. Forget it. It's terrible. It's hard to find housing. Well, if you already left and you shouldn't have ever gotten an eviction notice, that's ridiculous. So this law says you go to court and that judge has to throw that thing out, expunge your records. And finally, at the last month of if you're in a house that's in foreclosure, you can take your last month's rent, not pay it to the landlord, and use it for your next property. So the legislature did a lot for renters, and if you need it to contact me, that's my information. I'm going to sit down and shut up and get you to ask us some questions, and we'll have a dialogue. Thanks a lot.